For 15 years, Elias Vance has lived as the sole survivor of a tragedy he can't remember. All he knows is that one summer afternoon in 1988, his family vanished from a picnic, leaving him, a dazed 4-year-old twin, wandering alone at the edge of Shenandoah National Park. His brother, his mother, his father, gone. Now a call from a park ranger about a dented blue cooler, unearthed by a flash flood, threatens to shatter the fragile peace Elias has built, offering the first real clue to a past that has been nothing but a ghost. This story is a deep dive into how a single discovery can unravel a mystery that has slept for over a decade. If you've ever wondered what secrets might be hiding just beneath the surface of a quiet town, stick around. Because what was found inside that cooler changes everything. Elias traced the rim of his coffee cup, the ceramic cool against his fingertips. At 19, his life was a carefully constructed set of routines. College classes, the part-time job at the university library, quiet evenings with his adoptive parents, Beth and Tom. It was a good life, a stable life, but it was built on a foundation of fog. His memories of anything before the age of 4 were like broken glass, sharp, disconnected fragments that offered no clear picture. He could sometimes feel the warmth of the sun on his small face, hear the distant echo of a woman's laugh, and see a flash of bright blue like the summer sky. But the faces, the names, the story of who he was, that was all gone. All he had was the single faded photograph the police had used on the missing person posters. A man with a kind smile, a woman with dark, curly hair, and 2 identical little boys in matching striped shirts sitting on a blanket in front of that bright blue cooler. One of those boys was him. The other 3 were ghosts. The phone rang, cutting through the quiet morning. It was for him. A man named Ranger Davies from Shenandoah National Park. Elias's heart began a slow, heavy drumbeat against his ribs. The park was a place he'd only read about in the case file, the place where his life had split in 2. Mr. Vance? The ranger's voice was professional but held an undercurrent of something else, something cautious. My name is Alan Davies. A few days ago, we had some of the worst storms in a decade, caused some serious flash flooding down in the lower valley near the old Mill Creek trailhead. The water washed out a section of a dry creek bed that's been covered in silt and debris for as long as anyone can remember. He paused. We found something, son. Something we believe belonged to your family. Elias couldn't find his voice. He just listened, his knuckles white around the phone. It's a blue cooler, Davies continued. Dented, rusted, but it matches the one in the photos from your family's file. It was wedged under a pile of rocks. It must have been buried there for years. The floodwaters finally brought it to the surface. The flash of blue in his memory suddenly sharpened. A cooler. That cooler. Is there anything inside? Elias finally managed to ask, his voice raspy. There is, the ranger said. We haven't disturbed it much. The local sheriff's department has it now. They'd like you to come in, if you're willing, to formally identify it. They said there's a package of some kind inside. A fragile thread of hope, something Elias hadn't allowed himself to feel in years, began to pull at him. It was terrifying. Hope was dangerous. It was the one thing that could truly break the careful peace he had built. But he knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that he had to go. He had to see it. He had to know. After telling Beth and Tom, who masked their worry with supportive smiles, Elias packed a small bag, got in his car, and began the 3-hour drive to the small Virginia town that bordered the park, a town he hadn't set foot in since he was 4 years old. The sheriff's department was a small, unassuming brick building. Inside, a woman with tired eyes and a kind face introduced herself as Detective Harding. She had taken over the county's cold cases a few years back, and she knew the Vance family file by heart. She led Elias not to an evidence room, but to her own cluttered office. And there, sitting in the middle of the floor on a plastic tarp, was the cooler. It was just like the one in the picture, but time had been cruel to it. The bright blue plastic was faded and scarred, the metal hinges were dark with rust, and a large dent marred one side. It looked like an artifact from another world. "We wanted you to be here when we opened the package inside," Detective Harding said gently. "We ran it through the X-ray. It's not dangerous. Looks like papers, and it's been sealed up pretty well." A forensics technician with gloved hands carefully lifted a bundle from inside the cooler. It was a thick canvas pouch, the color of sand, and it was stiff with age. The edges had been sealed with a thick layer of dark wax, like an ancient letter. The technician used a small knife to carefully cut through the seal. The canvas parted, revealing a leather-bound journal, miraculously dry and intact. Detective Harding opened the journal to the first page. The handwriting was neat, precise, written in dark blue ink, and the first words made the air in the room go still. "My name is Julian Vance. If this is being read, it means my plan has failed, and God help us all." It was his father's journal. For the next 2 hours, Elias and Detective Harding sat in silence, turning the pages as a 15-year-old mystery began to bleed its secrets onto the desk. The story Julian Vance told was not one of a happy family man. It was a story of desperation. He wrote of his wife Annalise not with the love of a husband, but with the fear of a man trapped. He detailed her unpredictable moods, her violent outbursts, and a deep-seated unhappiness that no amount of love or patience could fix. Mixed in with these painful entries were notes about his finances. He wrote of a failed business, of loans taken from dangerous people, and of a debt that was growing like a cancer, threatening to consume them all. The happy family in the photograph was a lie, a carefully maintained performance for the outside world. "The picnic," Elias whispered, reading a specific entry aloud. "It was a setup." Detective Harding nodded, her eyes grim. It was his alibi, a way to create a last scene point for the family. The journal laid out the plan in meticulous detail. For months, Julian had been secretly creating new identities: Jonathan and Michael Reed, a father and his son. He had siphoned away what little money he could, bought a used car for cash, and planned a route that would take them across the country to a small, forgettable town in rural Oregon he'd picked from a map. The journal entry for the day of the picnic was the most chilling. "Today is the day. One last good memory for the boys. Annalise is in a good mood for once. She thinks this is about us reconnecting. After we eat, I'll suggest a walk to the waterfall. I'll take Leo with me. Elias will stay with her. While they are packing up the blanket, I will take Leo to the car I've hidden half a mile down the service road. Then I will come back for Elias. She will never see it coming. We'll be gone before she even realizes. 2 sons. I have to save them both." Elias's head was spinning. His father hadn't been a victim. He had been the architect. But the plan had a glaring hole. "He was supposed to come back for me," Elias said, his voice cracking. "He wrote he would come back for me. What happened?" The journal didn't have the answer. The entry stopped on the day of the picnic. The rest of the pages were blank. The plan had gone wrong. Horribly wrong. His father had taken his twin brother, Leo, and had left him behind. The knowledge was a physical blow, knocking the wind from his lungs. He wasn't the sole survivor of a tragedy. He was the piece that had been left behind. Detective Harding closed the journal. "Elias," she said, her voice firm but compassionate, "this changes everything. This isn't just a missing persons case anymore. Your father wasn't abducted. He was running. And the journal gives us a place to start looking." The town in Oregon was named Cedar Creek. It was small, isolated, and according to a quick search, had a population that hadn't changed much in 20 years. Using the alias from the journal, Jonathan Reed, Harding began making calls and running searches. For days, Elias stayed in a small motel in town, waiting. He walked the streets, trying to awaken a memory, a feeling, anything that connected him to this place. But there was nothing. He was a stranger here. The only connection he had to his past was the leather-bound book now sitting in an evidence bag. Finally, Detective Harding got a hit. A man named Jonathan Reed had received a driver's license in Oregon in 1989. The address was in Cedar Creek. He'd worked odd jobs over the years, mechanic, handyman, and had a son named Michael who had graduated from the local high school 2 years ago. The DMV photo attached to the license renewal was grainy, but the man's face was unmistakable. It was his father, Julian Vance, 15 years older, his hair graying at the temples, the kind smile from the picnic photo replaced by a weary sadness in his eyes. He was real. He was alive. And he had his brother. The trip to Oregon felt unreal, like a dream Elias was walking through. Detective Harding came with him, officially to question a person of interest, but Elias knew she was there for him. They flew to Portland and then drove for hours, the landscape changing from cityscapes to dense forests of pine and fir. Cedar Creek was nestled in a valley, a town of one main street and a handful of quiet residential roads. It was the kind of place people came to disappear. They found the house easily. It was a small single-story home with a tidy yard and a weathered porch swing. A beat-up pickup truck was parked in the driveway. This was it. After 15 years, the end of the trail. "I have to do this alone first," Elias told Harding. She hesitated, then nodded, parking the car a block away where she could see the front door. Elias walked up the gravel path, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his chest. Every step felt heavy, deliberate. What would he say? What could he possibly say to the man who had erased him? He knocked on the door. He heard footsteps inside, slow and shuffling. The lock turned, and the door creaked open. The man standing there was older, thinner than in the DMV photo, but the same sad eyes looked out at Elias with a tired confusion. It was him. It was his father. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Elias saw a flicker of disbelief in the man's eyes, quickly replaced by a wave of something else. Fear. Raw, absolute fear. The man's face went pale. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice a hoarse whisper. But Elias could see in his eyes that he already knew. "You know who I am," Elias said, his own voice shaking. Julian Vance, Jonathan Reed, stumbled back, his hand gripping the door frame for support. He looked as though he'd seen a ghost. "It can't be," he murmured. "Elias?" "Dad?" a voice called from inside the house. "Who is it?" A young man appeared behind Julian. He had the same face as Elias, the same build, the same dark hair. But his expression was open and curious, not shadowed by a lifetime of questions. He was whole. He was Leo. Elias stared at the brother he had only known through a faded photograph, a mirror image of himself who had lived a different life, a life with their father. Leo's eyes widened as he saw Elias, his face a mask of confusion. "What's going on?" Leo asked, looking from Elias to his father. Julian finally broke, his body seeming to collapse inward. "I'm so sorry," he choked out, his eyes locked on Elias. "I'm so sorry. It all went wrong." He sank onto a chair in the entryway, his head in his hands, and the full, tragic story of what happened that day in the park finally came out. The escape plan had started perfectly. He'd taken Leo to the hidden car, just as he'd written. But when he circled back to get Elias, his wife, Annalise, was nowhere to be seen. The picnic blanket was gone. The basket was gone. He thought she'd packed up and taken Elias for a walk. But as he got to his regular car, he saw her. She had been waiting for him. She knew. A terrible argument erupted on the side of a remote park road. She was screaming, trying to pull Leo from his car seat. Julian tried to hold her back. In the struggle on the loose gravel of the shoulder, she lost her footing. She stumbled backward over the edge of a steep, wooded ravine. He said he saw her fall, heard the sound, and then silence. He scrambled down, but it was too late. She was gone. It was a horrible, tragic accident, but in his panicked state, all Julian could think was that no one would believe him. They would see his debts, hear about their arguments, and they would call it murder. He had to run. He drove away, Leo crying in the back, his mind fractured with grief and terror. A few miles down the road, he saw flashing lights in his rearview mirror. He was sure it was the police coming for him. In a blind panic, he pulled over, saw Elias asleep in his car seat, and whispered, "Stay here. I'll be right back." He ran into the woods with Leo, planning to hide until the police passed. But when he finally crept back to the road minutes later, the police car which had only been a state trooper finishing a routine traffic stop, was gone. And so was his car. And so was Elias. He'd waited, hidden in the trees, for what felt like an eternity, but they never came back. He learned later that a park ranger on patrol had found Elias wandering by the road next to the empty car. Julian had made the most devastating choice of his life. To save the son he had to abandon the son he'd lost. He never stopped looking for news, never stopped feeling the guilt. He had just learned to live with it, a ghost in his own life. There was a long silence when he finished. Elias looked at Leo, who was now weeping silently. He looked at his father, a broken old man, destroyed by one moment of panic. The anger Elias had expected to feel wasn't there. There was just a profound, hollow sadness for the family that had been shattered on the side of that road. There were no arrests, the mother's death was an accident, and the legalities of the kidnapping were complicated by time and circumstance. Detective Harding made her report, and the official case of the Vance family was finally closed. The real story was about what came next. Elias stayed in Oregon for a week, in a motel room down the street from the small house. He and Leo spent hours together, talking, walking, sharing fragments of their two separate lives. It was awkward and strange. They were twins, yet they were strangers, their shared history a black hole of 15 years. Their father kept his distance, his shame a wall between them. The reunion wasn't a happy ending from a movie. It was quiet, painful, and uncertain. But for the first time in his life, Elias didn't feel like the sole survivor. He was a brother. He was a son. His past was no longer a ghost story. It was a tragedy, yes, but it was real. And as he and Leo sat on the porch watching the sun set over the unfamiliar mountains, Elias knew that the long, difficult journey of piecing their lives back together was just beginning. So, what do you think? If you were in Julian's shoes, panicked and believing you'd be blamed for your wife's accidental death, could you ever justify the choice to abandon one child to save the other? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story made you think, consider sharing it with someone who appreciates a mystery that's more about the human heart than the crime itself. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.